Hey, Carrie, can you just say something so I can check my headphone audio?
Okay, hello.
Oh, okay. Let me just turn my volume up.
Oh,
You, can you just say it again?
hello. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, I got you. I think I'm gonna be okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try and say something. Is there any echoing going on with me? No? Okay.
I can hear you fine.
I've got my husband logged in case my laptop freezes like it did a couple times ago. So I can do a quick switch to the other laptop. But
Yeah, I see that we're both signed in, but yeah, I was just testing to make sure because I'm at my son's that I put my earphones on so and everybody could hear me.
Robert Kibler is actually not here.
I figured that.
It's me, but we'll let him be in incognito.
It's all right. We'll let you do that.
Okay. Have there been any other site? I'm trying to think if there's any site visits we need to follow up on. I feel like we just did, we did a couple of pre-construction site visits we should just mention tonight. That's what we need to go over.
Yeah, I'm so
Just
trying to remember. It's like, okay, I know I did a bunch of stuff, but
58 Lake Drive, and then you did the Laurel, I don't remember the address. Was it X56 North
yeah.
Laurel? And then we did the Beaver thing. And I think that's the only site visits we've had. So that's good.
Is everybody here today?
Yes, everybody will be. We're still got 5 minutes. We should have everybody.
Yeah, I think I should be okay.
I'm going to take a quick. That wasn't me, was it?
No, I believe it was Mary's phone going off, so I just muted her.
Hi, everybody. Looks like the commission's all here. And Emily Stockman's here. I see Matt Cassane. I don't know, Matt, is April going to be here tonight?
Uh,
I'm sorry, was that a yes or no?
Can you hear me?
Just barely.
It'll just be me tonight. April won't be attending.
Okay, well, I've got 6:59, so we'll wait another minute and then we'll start the meeting. Oh. Okay, my laptop just crashed on me. So let's see if I can get it to go. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah. Yes,
Let
we
me see if I
can.
can turn up the sound on this. I'm not using, this is not my laptop. I do not know how to do this. Could somebody say something so I could hear?
We can hear you.
I don't know where the volume is on this. Hold
We
on
can
one
hear you
second.
fine.
This is not my computer.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
I cannot hear you. I don't know where the volume is. I gotta call my husband. Sorry, you guys. Give me 1 second. My computer crashed and I'm on your computer. I don't know where the volume button is. I can't hear anybody. FN. So I hold that down and then the up. And then what happens? Okay, somebody want to say something again?
Can you hear us?
Oh, I can't. Could you come down and help me? Sorry. I'm sorry, you guys, if you could just wait. I'm sorry for the delay. I knew this was going to happen this way. I had a second computer set up, but I don't know how to use this computer.
Miriam, every time you say that, someone asks if you can hear them and they say yes, you said, well, I can't hear you, but you can because you respond to them.
Yeah, I'm hearing it a little bit, but I'm not really hearing enough to be in the meeting. So give me 1 sec. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Are we good? Somebody say something?
Yes, we're good.
Something.
Hear you.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. All right, I'm good. Okay, so I'm going to call to order the Conservation Commission meeting and the public hearing for the ANRAD for 66 Lake Drive, Lot 032. And welcome everybody. And I'm going to put this on. If people need to ask questions or make comments, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and wait until I call on you before speaking. And since we have a large group of people, could keep themselves on mute. so we don't get background noise, that'd be great. So I see that we have Matt Cassane tonight representing the town on behalf of this ANRAD. And Matt, are you prepared to talk with Emily about the delineation report?
Yeah, so, I mean, what we're hoping tonight is to obviously continue to the next meeting in terms of a decision on the ANRAD itself. We are still in the process of compiling the data from the subsequent subsurface investigation that was conducted last week. April went out with one of our other field staff and conducted some test pit investigations in or around some of the previously mapped resource areas to get some further information, and is in the process of compiling a memorandum detailing her findings there. So, we'll need to get that over to the Conservation Commission, and Ms. Stockman, we're hoping to have that by first thing next week. And then obviously we'll need to respond to any follow-up comments that she has to that. And then, prepare an update to the wetland resources report and mapping on the back end of those discussions.
Okay. Well, we were prepared tonight, because we haven't reviewed the ANRAD yet, to review Emily Stockman's report and her recommendations. And we had expected, I think, that April would be here to have a back and forth discussion about what the next steps are, because we may, based on Emily's recommendations, have specific recommendations for the applicants. So I'm a little concerned that we don't have April here tonight. It would have been helpful to know in advance that she wasn't going to be here.
Well, I sent you an email a few days ago informing you that at this meeting, we would be requesting continuation to the next meeting for discussion on this.
Yeah, it wasn't clear that that meant we weren't going to have a discussion. And I just understood that we were not going to be prepared to issue an ORAD tonight because there was going to be some further investigation. So hold on. I guess the question I have now is, how are we going to proceed? Because I think Emily is here prepared to discuss her report. You've made some requests in emails of the commission. So it seems like we need to discuss those requests at the very least, even if we're not going to get into the meat of the delineations.
Recording in progress.
And there we go. Hold on one sec. Put that on mute. Whoop, here we go. Can you hear me okay? All right, I'm not echoing.
There is an echo.
That's great. Hang on, let's get rid of that. Okay. Well, see how that works. Hopefully I won't need that computer.
There's no echo.
All right, so that's kind of where we're at. And I think there might be members of the public that might want to ask questions as well, or present testimony. So how should we be proceeding?
I mean, it was my understanding that initially this meeting was scheduled to discuss the issuance of an ORAD in response to the ANRAD, and obviously we requested a continuation to have that discussion. So I'm a little confused as to, the reasoning behind kind of an interim discussion, until that final kind of report is issued in response to the ongoing peer review process.
Okay.
I guess I'm, if you can kind of detail to me the reasoning or purpose behind having this interim discussion in advance of us presenting our revised delineation in response to the ongoing peer review process.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be having a discussion if you're proposing a revision of the ANRAD, except to the point that we may want to discuss what next steps we're going to be asked of you. There are a couple of requests that you've made in emails that I feel like we should probably address before we continue the public hearing. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, that's acceptable. We can discuss those, and any other requests that you have of us, that's fine with us. I guess I was just confused as to it being I guess I would have had April on, I guess, if that was more clearly communicated as the purpose of this kind of interim meeting, knowing that. But like I said, I did email the Conservation Commission a few days back, kind of detailing what we were going to be looking to do tonight. So, I apologize that April's not here, but I guess I'm a little also, not confused, but I guess it was a misinterpretation of what the purpose of tonight's meeting was going to be.
Yeah, I think there was a misunderstanding, and it was not clear from your email that you were requesting that we not have a hearing. I just understood that there would be a continuation, but we don't need to dwell on that. I want to make sure the public understands that we're going to defer some of the review of this project to a later hearing date. And for that reason, we'll probably make this a shorter public hearing, because if the applicants are going to be changing their submittals, we need to look at what their final submittal is before we start delving into the questions about it, I think. The questions that I have on my list that were raised by you, Matt, was that you were asking the commission to agree to allow Emily Stockman to do a peer review site visit without a commissioner present. That was in your email. That was one of the questions. Yes.
Read the question out to me.
I do not have my email open. There was an email asking if there could be a site visit without a commissioner for the sake of efficiency, I think was the gist.
I think, no, that was in response to the work that we did last week. You had requested if the commission could be present during that work. And we just had some concern about our ability to do the work efficiently, kind of with, 10 people standing behind April, watching her do the test pit digging. And I think what our offer was that if the commission, I guess, was concerned about our, activities or what we were doing, we suggested that maybe, Emily could be present for that. We weren't asking for, any sort of permission for Emily to be there. We were just kind of, initially, we just wanted to go out and do the work, present it. But we had gotten a request from you to see if the commission could be present during the work. And our response was just that we thought it would be, from an efficiency perspective, for us to be able to get our work done. We just kind of wanted to go out, present our data. And I think, April had offered, though, that if you wanted Emily to come out, that was fine with us. But we weren't, I guess, asking for permission. We were just presenting that as an option.
Okay, I found the email, and what it said is, while the town remains steadfast in being as transparent as possible in regard to all ongoing delineation work, it is also cognizant that infield oversight by the commission might inhibit Fuss and O'Neill's ability to perform the wetland delineation and soils investigation in a timely manner. So you're certainly free to, and I imagine the rest of the commission would agree, to do whatever investigations you want to do without either the commission or Emily Stockman present. That's certainly your prerogative. I think if we were going to have Emily go out and do another site visit, the standard procedure is to allow the commission the opportunity to also be present if commissioners wish to be there.
No, absolutely. And we're completely, agree to that. I think our concern was, and as many people would know, when we're out doing field investigations or field work, it is a very kind of thought intensive process. And, just with the same with environmental and investigation work, having, a bunch of people present during that process can, affect our ability to efficiently complete the work. So that was kind of all that response was. We weren't, obviously the commission, has the ability to come out. We were just responding to that comment. We obviously welcome you guys coming out whenever you would like, but that was just our kind of response there, and letting you know kind of what our usual practice is when we're dealing with these sorts of situations in other communities.
Okay.
But
Great. So in terms of other questions, I know that, there were some emails where you were requesting whether Emily was agreeable to you're doing some additional investigations, and I'm going to let Emily respond to that. Though my understanding is that, again, you as the applicants can do what you choose to do and resubmit. I guess one question is if there's significant revisions, whether it can all be done under the existing ANRAD or whether there needs to be a withdrawal and resubmission. I don't know if that's the case or not. I suspect these revisions can be made within this certain file number, but I would imagine it's important that any revisions get sent to DEP as well as to the commission.
yeah, and any revisions would be submitted to the Western Regional Office as well. In the past, with other municipalities, we've done it under the existing ANRAD, even if we've had some more major changes to the initial delineation. So, that was our intent moving forward, but, I'd be interested to hear if Emily, I guess, has a different opinion on that.
So the other couple questions that perhaps we might need to discuss tonight include making sure you're aware of what our winter policy is, which we let you know about back in September. So that if we're running into snow conditions, what the impact of that might be. And in Emily's report, there was some discussion about the disclaimer about the accuracy of the measurements. And it seemed to me that that might be something we might want to discuss and determine whether we want to ask you to provide additional documentation. And maybe that could be discussed if you're okay with it so that you can be prepared for the next hearing. I don't think we need to have April here.
Yeah, so I guess to speak.
But let me
Oh,
just see. So those are just questions I have. I don't know if other commissioners have questions that they want to make sure we discuss tonight. And I want to give Emily an opportunity also to weigh in.
I don't have any other questions. I guess my one question is these changes that are being proposed, are these in response to Emily's third-party review, or are these just changes that Fuss and O'Neill have sort of decided that they would like to look at?
So in my discussions with April, any changes that are being made or going to be proposed to the delineation is in response to the third-party review by Emily. So her field visit with Emily and discussions during that field visit. So we don't have any other changes that we're proposing that were just changes that we deemed, kind of out of the blue that we would like to make. They're all derived from the field visit with Emily.
Okay. And I just want to make a comment here, which, I understand that there was back and forth and there needs to be back and forth during site visits between the third-party reviewer and the applicants. But I also want to observe and note that even in that site visit, Emily made a remark that, this was not a place for her to be deliberating and that her final report would include her final analysis. And there were a few times during that site visit where either Emily or I asked people not to deliberate or ask her to deliberate or opine because she wasn't prepared to give final recommendations. So I think in terms of what recommendations to rely on, her final report, in my opinion, would be the guidance that is her best guidance with after all the analysis that you conducted. But Emily, do you want to weigh in?
Hi, Miriam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for that introduction. Yes, during a typical site visit, there is back and forth and discussion between the peer reviewer and the delineator. And April and I did get into some discussion, as you would expect, in the terms of methodology and technical assessment. And so I would imagine that she took that discussion to move forward with her further exploration and investigation, as Matt has summarized for us. And that is reflected in the formal peer review letter. I also did receive an email forwarded to me from the commission from Fuss and O'Neill, where there were, I believe it was 3 follow-up questions, just looking for clarification on some of my comments. And I did respond to those via email, again, through the commission. So I wanted to make myself available this evening. This is the first time that the commission is meeting. And you've had my peer review comments for a couple weeks now. So I wanted to make myself available to the commission in case there were any questions about the comments, and also to make myself available to Matt and Fuss and O'Neill in case there were any further questions.
Well, I would like to ask you some questions, and with permission, I think from the applicant, if we could have some more general questions from Emily, if just so we can understand her comments without delving into maybe the nitty-gritty, so that we're not putting Matt, you in a position where you can't respond. Because April's not here, but there were just some clarifications I was wanting to ask Emily for.
Yeah,
If that-
yeah, that's we're agreeable to that.
Yeah. So Emily, could you just explain for us what your comment about the sub-meter accuracy and the GPS data comment? I think this was your first comment.
Yeah, certainly. So it's very common nowadays for delineators to use sub-meter GPS when locating their flags. And the important aspect of that for the commission to be aware of is that while the equipment has the capability of collecting data at a sub-meter accuracy, that doesn't mean that there is an absence of potential interference where the accuracy of those points is not at a sub-meter level. And this is a comment that I believe this commission has seen before, and it's one that we regularly provide to commissions just to request data from the applicant demonstrating that the points that were obtained with that equipment were in fact sub-meter. It's not uncommon. For example, I have my own unit. If you're delineating a hemlock swamp and you have that heavy coniferous overhang, you can get what appears to be a sub-meter reading, but when you get back to the office, you realize that there was interference from the canopy, and that point is not plotted correctly. So we just recommend that commissions take a hard look at maps that are generated through the sub-meter GPS as opposed to traditional location by survey. So that's a fairly straightforward comment, but in addition to that, I did note that there was a fairly significant disclaimer on the maps that were produced by Fuss and O'Neill. And in my opinion, a final plan for an ANRAD with such a disclaimer would not be appropriate. So it was, my recommendation that the commission reach out to Fuss and O'Neill and have a discussion and make a request regarding both the sub-meter GPS accuracy and either the removal of the disclaimer or some clarification on that.
Yes, and just for the benefit of the public, the disclaimer reads, this map is not the product of a professional land survey. It is not a legally authoritative source as to the location of natural or man-made features. So that's concerning since it's being submitted as being scientific evidence to support the ANRAD. And the applicant is asserting that this data that's been collected meets the scientific standard for delineation. So this disclaimer would seem to contradict that. So I would like to get a response from Fuss and O'Neill about that. And personally, I would like to ask Fuss and O'Neill to provide supporting documentation for the GPS accuracy. I think that's a reasonable ask.
Yeah. So our response would be, I guess that language is in place for at least for our figures that have not been professionally surveyed in by a licensed survey crew, but we can take a look or discuss with our other wetland natural resource folks and see if there's some, I guess, alternate language, and then also ask April to get some backup for the accuracy of the flag points. If there's, I'm not familiar with the unit, but I will talk to her to see if there's some way that she can produce some sort of table showing what the accuracy of each point was. And, if there's any issues, I guess, with the accuracy of any of the points, if we can potentially, go back out and see if we can reshoot them in with the handheld GPS to make sure that we're getting the sub-meter. Again, I'm not sure, all of them could be sub-meter. I just have to check with April on that. But like I said, I think we're agreeable to getting some sort of backup to provide to the Conservation Commission to show that. And then additionally, we'll take a look at that disclaimer. Again, that's just stock kind of language that we use on figures that have not, or showing elements that have not had a professional survey completed. But we can take a look and see, if it can be worded a different way where it doesn't, I see the interpretation of it. And like I said, that is something
Like
that was
we approve
from our standards.
We approve a map that's
Yeah.
legally binding, and for that map to say, by the way, this can't be legally binding is a little bit of a problem. So that would be great if you could take a look at that. Was the original GPS was taken with a handheld GPS?
Yes. So we have that. It's a handheld sub-meter GPS that we use in the field, that April uses in the field.
Okay.
So, I mean, what we can do is, the qualifier or the notation there can be a little more descriptive and just kind of say that this data was collected using a sub-meter GPS, data was provided, but it was, just to note that no, it was not a professional or a certified land survey, but, it was, used. We can even detail the unit that was used. And then, like I said, we'll provide some backup data for the accuracy of those points.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
The other question I had, and this again, is a general question, so it wouldn't require April's presence here, and maybe other people have questions as well. But my question was that since Emily was referencing the Army Corps supplement, and particularly the chapter for difficult situations, for delineation of difficult situations, and she's recommending that methodology be used. And it's a long chapter and it deals with a lot of different circumstances. And I just felt like for my benefit and for the benefit of the commission, maybe if she could explain how she thinks it would make most sense to apply that chapter for this particular parcel. Is that something that you feel like you could do, Emily?
Certainly.
On the spot.
No, so I'm just going to take a step back. So based on landscape features that I observed in the field, as well as evidence of fill and buried soil horizons and some alteration of vegetation by historic and repeated mowing, there was a discussion during the site visit, reiterated in my report that the section of the Wetlands Protection Act, 310 CMR 1055 2C3 would apply to this site. And that's a section of the regs that acknowledges that there are bordering vegetated wetlands in the Commonwealth that have been altered. And because they have been altered, they may not show a predominance of wetland vegetation, but need to be vetted as to whether or not they would meet that criteria if they had not been altered or if they were restored. Then getting into a little more detail, the regional guidance for the North Central and Northeast region gets into some very specific methodology, as you said, in Chapter 5, difficult situations. So the chapter addresses whether there are alterations to soil. And from my observation of the site, there are areas where the soils have been altered. And so there's a methodology that would be followed to establish a wetland boundary under those circumstances. It also covers whether or not the vegetation has been disturbed. And there are some areas on the property where vegetation, as I said, has been disturbed by continuous mowing. So that would apply. And there can also be instances where hydrology has been disturbed. That is a more challenging methodology to employ. It's usually a more lengthy and time-consuming one. And the challenge with this particular site is that there's been a long history of manipulation of all three parameters. And so depending on what boundary is being revisited and reassessed, one or more of those methods may apply.
Okay. Do you have any specific recommendations for Fuss and O'Neill at this point for their future assessments? That you'd like
No,
to-
when I was out on the field, April was demonstrated a great amount of knowledge. I thought she did an excellent job conveying to me her rationale for the placement of certain flags, and she seemed odd because she's not here tonight, Matt. But it was my impression that she was very aware of this Section 5 difficult situations chapter. So I felt confident that she knew what I was recommending and that she would make the appropriate steps moving forward.
I don't know if we should make a comment about this, but I just, for the benefit of the commission, because this was a conversation I had just with Emily, and I just want to share it, that, the applicants have discussed reevaluating the boundaries of a couple of wetlands. One of them, Emily is recommending that they reevaluate for what is now called an isolated vegetated wetland number 2. And Emily, in her site review, determined that it appears to be a bordering vegetated wetland because we were able to obtain consent to go onto the abutters property at 62 Leverett Road and determine that there was connectivity to make it a BVW. And so that boundary was being recommended that she reevaluate. However, the boundary to BVW1, Emily was concurring with. And the applicant in their email had communicated to us that they were considering reevaluating that boundary. And the conversation that Emily and I had, and I just want to share it for everybody's benefit, is that my understanding, the standard of evidence is that we make decisions based on the preponderance of scientific evidence, meaning compelling scientific evidence that meets a 51% standard. And given that Fuss and O'Neill has presented us with scientific data to assert the current boundary for BVW1, and Emily reviewed it in the field and concurred, It strikes me that that may be a steep, I don't know what the obstacle to overcome in order to meet that evidentiary standard. And I understand that the applicants are free to do what they want to do, but I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
Miriam, oh,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah,
Miriam, would it be appropriate for me to respond with some further comment on that?
absolutely, absolutely. Please do.
Yeah. So I did state in my peer review comments that I do concur with the boundary as it's depicted. When we were out on the field site, I did evaluate the vegetation and, more importantly, perhaps the soil within an area that would be considered inner buffer zone. So I evaluated and concurred that there were uplands, up gradient of the wetland delineation flags. I subsequently went back to the office and did a more thorough view of the data forms that April had prepared documenting that wetland. And I concurred based on the data presented. I concurred with her conclusion. That being said, as wetland delineators, we go out in the field and we're there for whatever period of time. And it's usually brief in the scheme of things, considering that the wetlands are there for 365 days a year. And we're usually out there for a day or a morning. And flags sometimes are placed at, greater distances, maybe. There may be an instance where an overall boundary also encapsulates some isolated uplands. During the site visit, there was some discussion, and again, April is not here, so this is just my interpretation of that based on a discussion on soil development, that there may have been some upland areas that had been called out as wetlands. It is my understanding that the applicant and their representative have every right to go back and review a boundary and attempt to come up with what we would call in the business a tighter line, to make sure that there are no inclusions of upland within that boundary. And if they choose to do so, the appropriate methodology should be followed and documented and then presented to the Conservation Commission for review.
Thank you.
Miriam, and then I'll just add to that quick, because I have had a pretty thorough discussion with April on this.
Matt, that's fine for you to respond, but
Yeah.
we're asking everybody to raise their hand to.
Okay.
Thank you. No, you can go ahead, but please.
Okay. So I have, spoken with April on this, and my understanding of it is, what Emily just detailed, and that was part of what we were doing out there last week with the hand dug test pits in or around BVW1, to further investigate, those subsurface conditions that Emily was outlining. And that is part of what is being detailed. I took a look at a draft today in the memorandum that April is compiling, detailing that subsequent work that she did last week. So, we did take that suggestion from Emily, and that was part of our further investigation last week. And like I said, that memorandum detailing what we did, showing photos, and a narrative is forthcoming, and hopefully we'll have it to you first thing next week.
Okay, great. I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that remain. I think the plan would be that once you give us these updates, then Emily would review them and give us an updated written comments. And then usually the process is that the applicant would have an opportunity to respond in writing. And what we've done with other ANRADs, just so you're aware, Matt, is the applicant sometimes would take the comments by number, like comment number 1, and here's the applicant's response, comment number 2, here's their response. And sometimes those responses were to concur or to offer a different perspective or suggest a next step, if there was going to be a next step to follow up on. But just, that was very helpful for us to have that process. So we're hoping that we could look for that with this next round of reviews. Is that okay? Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, I think, that we're agreeable to that we can present it in that fashion.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to discuss with April, and obviously,
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So we are supposed to meet next on December 8th, and my understanding is you would like to continue to December 8th, which is fine. Is that going to be enough time? I'm a little concerned with the holiday, to schedule the site visit with Emily and then get these layers of review through. Because it's what, about 3 weeks? Maybe a little less than 3 weeks. Emily, how would that work for you?
Miriam, I was just pulling up my calendar while you were speaking. So it is a tight timeline given the commission's previous established deadline. So in the past, I have been responsible for providing comments to the commission 2 weeks in advance of the meeting, which would be Thanksgiving. So that would mean I would have to have a site visit beforehand. Yeah, so I think that given past timelines that the commission has set, that would be tight. If I understand Matt correctly, a response from Fuss and O'Neill will be forthcoming early next week. Is that correct?
yeah, it is April's intent to have that out to you by Monday.
And then, and again, I'm speaking through the chair, Miriam, I hope this is okay. Then I would be happy to look at the week of the 21st to schedule a return site visit with April and the commission.
Next week?
I'm sorry, the 28th.
Okay. So that would mean, let's say we can get that scheduled the 28th. And then, just looking at, and then get your, let's say, could you get us your comments by the 1st?
I can do my utmost to get you my comments by the 1st. Yep.
Would it make sense? I don't know what to suggest. I am concerned that this isn't enough time, and I really don't like putting you in this position as our consultant. And I understand it's very tight turnaround for Fuss and O'Neill as well if they have to respond to your comments. Would the commission want to entertain a second meeting in December?
Yeah. Can I give you a good night kiss? Yeah.
Thank
you.
I don't know, I hear somebody's voice or somebody,
Adorable person.
a little cute person. I would rather suggest that, I'm all right, if we're still shooting for the 8th, I'm all right, getting all these reports even on Monday of that week, which is, what is that? That's the 5th, so that would give Emily a little more time. For me personally, it's okay if we get all the information on Monday, the 5th. Rather do that than have a meeting on the 22nd.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that. I was thinking maybe the following week, not the 22nd, but do it on maybe the 15th. But we also, our plan usually is not to meet for a second time in December. So I want to be mindful about that. That's fine with me, if that will work for everybody. So we have a plan that, Emily would get us her comments by that Monday of the 5th.
That's fine with me.
Me as well.
Is that okay, given that that makes that you have a tight turnaround if you have any comments before the hearing on the 8th? We probably wouldn't have time to review those comments. If you have them, would have to look at them the day of. And that's the thing I don't like, is getting comments that I haven't had time to really review and think about before the hearing.
If it helps to alleviate, I'm prepared to commit to having them to you by the 1st. I think that gives Fuss and O'Neill a more reasonable, although tight turnaround. If we wait to the 5th, that's an awful lot for Fuss and O'Neill and the commission to process before the 8th. So I will commit to the
Thank you.
1st, as long as we all have the understanding that it's currently snowing at my house, and we are going to be at the mercy of the site conditions as we move forward with these site reviews.
Yes. So I agree. I think that sounds great. So if you're, let's say that if Emily is able to get us her comments by the 1st, weather permitting, could Fuss and O'Neill commit to getting us their response, if they have any, by the 5th? So we have 2 or 3 days to review them before our meeting.
Yeah, we can get you a response by the 5th to her comments if we receive on the 1st.
Because if it's less than that, I can't guarantee that we will all have had time to review them, and then we would have to continue again. And just to be mindful again about the winter policy, that if there is snow on the ground here, I would consult with Emily and make a determination about whether or not the site visit can go forward. And if the decision's made that it can't go forward, then we would have to take it at that and decide going forward whether there's going to be another opportunity this winter where they can do the site visit, or whether it has to be postponed.
Yep.
Is that understood, Matt?
Yeah, no, I talked to April about that. I mean, we're agreeable with Emily's opinion on, whether the weather, what the weather conditions dictate in that regard.
Right. And she may be dependent on me because she's not here locally, but I will go out and take photographs and send her pictures. So if we're going to make a decision like that, I'll make sure she has the right information.
Okay, thank you.
But she's not going to come from Pittsfield or wherever to come out and look at the site conditions, but I will review it with her. Okay, so I think we have a plan. The other email question that came up was about the NOI planning, and I don't think we're going to discuss or make a decision about that tonight, because the plan is for us to meet with the select board at some time in December to discuss what the NOI permitting planning is going to look like. And I understand that, the request is for there to be a standalone notice of intent for the BVW cleanup. I do want to just say that that may be something that the commission will have to discuss and make a decision about whether that's acceptable or not. Okay. Are there any comments from the public before we move on? Nope. Okay. All right. So would the plan would be to continue it to the 8th at 8 p.m. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue?
I think Grace has her hand up, or did.
Oh, yes, great.
Yeah, I've been watching since the meeting started. I don't actually understand what just happened. Would someone on the committee please summarize what just happened? Thank you.
Well, I'll do my best. And please jump in. So April is not here tonight, and so we're not prepared tonight to review the specific feedback and discussion about any reevaluations of any wetland boundaries in any detail, both because April's not here and because Fuss and O'Neill is going to be revising their ANRAD application with some new data and perhaps a revised map, which we don't have yet.
Who is April?
April Dorosky is the wetland scientist working for Fuss and O'Neill.
Okay, and what is her job?
She is the wetland scientist who did the wetland delineations on behalf of the town.
So what are the things that we cannot do because she's not here?
Well, it's inappropriate for us to be asking Fuss and O'Neill to respond if she's not here to respond, since she did the delineations, and Matt Cassane is representing Fuss and O'Neill, but he's not the scientist who did the delineation. So if there's going to be any technical discussion about the methodology or this data that was revealed in the investigations, we need to give April Dorosky, the scientist who did those investigations, an opportunity to share that information with the commission. And if we have questions of her, we can't ask her any questions because she's not here tonight.
So what I'm understanding is that the person who did the work isn't here tonight, so we can't ask her questions about that work. Is that correct?
Yes. that's
Okay,
what I
so
said.
what was all that talking about?
Well, without getting into all of the details, Grace, with the permission of Matt Cassane, we asked Emily Stockman, our third-party reviewer, to explain a couple of her comments that didn't require any response from April. So she had a recommendation that the commission might want to ask Fuss and O'Neill to provide data about the accuracy of their GPS devices. April didn't need to be here for us to ask Emily what she meant by that recommendation. We also asked Emily to explain a methodology that she referenced in her report that's fairly complex and hard to understand. And so just for the benefit of the commission, so we can understand her report, we asked her to explain that reference.
And you decided on a new meeting that's going to happen after Thanksgiving. And what's the purpose of that?
So this is a public hearing, and public hearings can spread over multiple meetings. And so we're not concluding this public hearing. The public hearing is going to be continued. We're not closing the public hearing because we are still.
I understand that. I meant, what was the purpose of the upcoming site visit that you guys just agreed on?
So Fuss and O'Neill have told us that they have done some additional investigations. We don't have the results of those investigations yet. Once they give them to us, our third-party reviewer will go out and do a site inspection with the commission to review what that new data looks like and to verify it. And then she will give us some written feedback, whether she concurs with what Fuss and O'Neill has done or whether she has different recommendations. And then all of that information will be reviewed at the next public hearing.
And what's the purpose of this?
We are collecting scientific data from credible sources, meaning from scientists and other knowledgeable people, Grace, so we can make an informed decision about the wetland delineations, which is what the ANRAD is for. What this application is for is delineating wetlands based on scientific data. And
Okay.
the hearing is collecting that scientific data as well as testimony and information from the public so that we can make an informed decision.
Okay.
Does that help? Was there anything else you're wondering about?
I mean, I don't actually understand what just happened. And I would love to hear from other members of the committee as much as I hear from you, Miriam. But
Grace,
I
would
think that you have answered the question to the best of your abilities, and I definitely understand it better than I did before. So thank you.
Would anybody else from the commission like to add to this?
I don't think I could explain it any clearer than you did, Miriam, so thank you.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Certainly do not mean to be speaking for the commission. If anybody has something they'd like to add. Beth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think that was a good description of what just happened.
Right.
I agree.
And I understand that we kind of jumped into the meat of this discussion kind of quickly in this hearing because the hearing isn't actually kind of going in the way a typical hearing would go, where an applicant kind of gives us an update and reviews the project, and then we ask a bunch of questions, and our third-party reviewer goes through her analysis. So my hope would be that that's what's going to happen on the 8th when we meet, is that we'll go through that process and it'll be more understandable to the public. Okay, I do see some questions from the public, and I don't know the order in which people's hands were raised. So I'm gonna just go Zipporah and then Leslie and then Mateo. And just for the sake of brevity, we usually ask people to restrict their comments to less than 2 minutes.
Thank you. This is Zipporah. I'm wondering what the commission's responsibility or role is in any contaminants found on the site.
May I answer that on behalf of the commission? Is that okay? So, hold on one second. So, tonight we're reviewing an application around wetland delineation. We're not reviewing any other projects tonight. So issues around ground contamination is reviewed by DEP. And so those investigations are under the supervision and authority of DEP, not our commission. There is a plan for a cleanup NOI for some wetlands that have some fill in them, some debris and some old landfill material that needs to be removed. And that'll be reviewed at a later date, not tonight, because the town is going to submit an application, and then we'll have a whole public review process for that cleanup effort. So we're not there yet, and we don't want to kind of get ahead of our skis with that, because we're not prepared tonight to talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Leslie?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a partial response to Grace. I submitted comments regarding the ANRAD and the Stockman peer review report, 3 pages, but I'm going to try to just hit a couple of the highlights. Number one, there's an elephant in the room regarding the history of this property. It's a very checkered history with years of dumping, abuse, 21 potential 21E site. So that's hovering in the background of a lot of residents who are concerned, not just about the wetland delineation and the ANRAD that's been submitted, but the overall history of the property. And it's certainly bleeding into some of the conversations about this. Having said that, the peer review by Stockman Associates, in my view, my professional view is exemplary. And what it did very clearly was show and demonstrate the inadequacies of the original delineations and data prepared by Fuss and O'Neill. And repeatedly in her examination, talking about over time, historic fill and dumping, disturbed soils, buried debris, surface litter, past earth moving. There's a very checkered history here. So delineating the wetlands is a challenge. And Stockman Associates evaluated historic and past aerials and reporting information to this. And a wetland scientist doesn't do that as an idle exercise. A wetland scientist will do that to really fully understand the kind of alterations that have taken place to the site over a period of time. So the request for further delineation using the Corps of Engineers wetlands manual is called for because of the abuse that has taken place on this property. And I hope that for Grace and for other folks, you know, that is clear. It's a clear explanation about it. And my bottom line comment,
Leslie, could you wrap up?
Okay, my bottom line comment is at this point in time, I understand it's been continued, but the way that ANRAD had been continued originally, it should not be accepted by the commission. Thank you.
All right, Mateo.
Thank you. I just had a quick question for the commission, which is, it seems like this process is getting longer and longer, and I appreciate the need for accuracy and peer review, but I'm wondering, subsequent to this peer review process, how many additional peer reviews will there be? Like, when does this process come to a conclusion? What is the satisfactory end of this?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think I have a good answer. I think our interest is doing this as rapidly as possible and efficiently as possible. I don't want to, ANRADs can get complicated, and this is a very complex ANRAD with a lot of very difficult to delineate areas. And so the hope is that all of these review processes can get concluded and we can have one or more, perhaps only one more hearing, and then issue an order. And it's called an order of resource area delineation, which is basically we approve a site map. We basically say, okay, we agree on these wetlands and we are approving a map that's reflecting those wetland lines. And I can't tell you how long it takes because I don't know what's going to happen. But our goal is to do it quickly. And that's what we're trying to do by kind of speeding up our turnaround time faster than we ordinarily would if it was a different circumstance. If it was, for example, the ANRADs that we did for the solar projects, we wouldn't have done this fast a turnaround that we're agreeing to tonight. So we are trying to be flexible to accommodate everybody. Would that make sense? Anyone want to add anything? Okay. Okay. Zipporah, I see your hand raised, but I'd like to give Mike Vinsky an opportunity since he hasn't spoken yet. And again, if people are going to make comments, please try to keep them limited to the discussion at hand, which is the ANRAD, not the larger issues around this parcel, because that's not what we're reviewing in this public hearing. And go ahead, Mike.
Oh, thank you. I just have a question. There's been reference to some situations that might require a different evaluation method. And it's referenced as like a difficult situations category. And Emily has suggested and maybe recommended that be used in these situations. And my question is, who will decide whether that method will be used or won't be? Is that for the Conservation Commission to make that requirement, or is that an option for Fuss and O'Neill?
Emily, do you want to respond to that?
Certainly, I'll give that a shot. So the difficult situation chapter in the regional handbook that was cited is a standard in the profession. And so when you have a situation with a landscape that has been recently and historically disturbed and altered, that's the methodology that is typically used, and it is the methodology that I would employ and that I recommend. That being said, if a delineator wanted to choose a different methodology that was also noted within the profession, they could propose that. Ultimately, the Conservation Commission would rule, I would imagine, on what methodology they wanted to see. But this is an industry standard that I'm citing here, and one that was discussed during the site visit. And the delineator from Fuss and O'Neill appeared to be aware of it. So we've yet to receive that response, as has been discussed this evening by Matt. But I would expect to see a response citing the Chapter 5 difficult situations. I don't know if Matt's in a position to respond to that this evening.
I mean, I'll just say that, April and Fuss O'Neill, we've taken those suggestions and kind of executed our follow-up investigation per those suggestions. So we, have taken the recommendation and, which April, agreed upon and kind of relayed that to us and are carrying forward with that subsequent investigation.
Emily, can I ask you a question? If the applicant decides to use this methodology, this alternative methodology from the difficult situations chapter, do they also need to present a justification or rationale for why they believe that's justified in that particular location? I understand that lots of areas on this property show complexity, but some areas are more complex than others. And there might be some areas where a more standard delineation methodology would work. Do they need to justify the use of this in the particular location where they're applying it?
That's an excellent follow-up question, Miriam. So the original delineation that was submitted with the ANRAD utilized wetland determination data forms from this same regional handbook. Again, an industry standard. On those data forms, it asks specifically for the delineator to relate whether or not the vegetation, the soil, or the hydrology are significantly disturbed. And it could be one or it could be all three. As the delineator is evaluating the site and determining what parameters, vegetation, soil, or hydrology are significantly disturbed, they're then employing that section of the chapter to perform their assessment and complete their delineation. So I would anticipate that this would be documented by Fuss and O'Neill on the data forms, as well as an accompanying narrative.
Great. Perfect. All right. Are there any more questions or comments? And again, this isn't the last hearing. There will be hearing on the 8th. Okay. Are we ready to continue? Entertain a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion that we continue to the December 8th meeting, continue this public hearing
Okay, at 8 o'clock.
at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Second,
A second.
David,
Aye.
DeFont, aye, Harrington,
Aye.
Han,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to the rest of our agenda. And I have a new item that is time sensitive, that just came up this afternoon that I need the commission to review. First, we had a draft winter policy that Beth put together, and I circulated it to the commission. Has everybody had a chance to look at it?
Yeah.
So that was based on the policy from the Weston Conservation Commission, who have a conservation staff person. So I changed the wording to include that the chair would make that determination if it had to be made before the next scheduled meeting. If that policy needed to be applied. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it's a situation where, we haven't scheduled meeting that we can review it, but if an application comes in the winter and we're already in deep winter, I need to be able to tell applicants what our situation is for reviewing the policy so that they can decide how they want to proceed.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And, the purpose, just for everybody to understand, the purpose of this is to make sure that projects are reviewed under conditions where we can verify the wetland conditions. So would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a
I mean,
motion that we accept the policy.
I see a hand raised. Penny, did you want to comment?
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Well, I just have one minor suggestion. I think it's great you're creating a policy, although I don't see I don't see your policy, so I don't know exactly what you're approving. But I wonder if in the same way, when you do site visits, you have two people consult. If rather than having just the chair just make the determination, if the chair does this in consultation with at least one other commissioner. So the onus doesn't fall entirely on the shoulders of the chair to make that sort of a call.
The only concern I have is whether that amounts to a deliberation. If it's if we're making a decision between two commissioners, it's one of the reasons why the chair can issue and enforce an emergency certification unilaterally. But I think the consult would then be a deliberation. That would be my concern. Certainly.
So I don't have a problem with the chair making that decision.
I'm just saying it's a lot of responsibility to put entirely on the chair's shoulders.
Especially since we have a paid staff person.
Could you please raise your hand to be
Do you have thoughts on that, Miriam? As chair, I'd be curious if, because I tend to think of it in terms of, that it seems like it's something that the chair could make, but do you feel like that would put an undue burden on you as chair to do that without consulting with the commission?
I think that, the policy is pretty clear. And if I have questions, I can always contact DEP and consult with them, because they also have a policy discouraging the review of projects during the winter months. That's in their BVW manual. And so the language is really lifted out of that DEP policy. And I could certainly reach out to our circuit rider for feedback so that I'm not making the decision unilaterally, because DEP also needs to be involved if it's a project, if there was an appeal, for example. I think that this is a determination decision. I don't think it's really appropriate to leave it to the land use clerk to be making decisions that would be legally binding.
I was just gonna say, I tend to think that having you do that as chair, I'm very comfortable with that.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the policy as reviewed and written.
Penny, I see your hand raised.
It concerns.
I think we have a motion that we.
Okay, Penny, I'll let you have a comment, but I think we've kind of discussed your concern. Unless you have a new comment, I don't want to kind of re-litigate this. And I can assure you, I have no interest in misapplying this. It's a serious matter, and people have a right to see their applications processed in a speedy way. At the same time, I'm aware of a recent circumstance where an application was approved and the site visit was done in the winter. This was before I wasn't involved on the commission at the time. And it turned out that there was a BVW under a snowbank that wasn't recognized. So I think it's important that we have this policy to make sure that we understand the conditions on the ground. But go ahead, Penny.
I'll make one quick comment. And as the commission is discussing this, what I hear the commission saying is that I feel confident having Miriam make the decision. And I have no question that you would make a competent decision. But you're not going to be the chair forever. So this needs to be something that the commission feels comfortable with no matter who is the chair.
Yeah, I amend my comment to say I feel comfortable with the chair making the decision.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, I think, you know, in the town that this was an example from, they were relying on staff to make the decision, which to me is even a step further away, you know. So I feel like having the chair involved in making the decision is a little even more, makes me feel even more comfortable than if we had a staff member doing it. So I'm fine with it.
Me too.
All right, Mary, do you want to restate your motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the policy as reviewed and written.
And there's a second?
Second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
Defont, abstain. Khan,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. I will post it on our website. I have a few more updates and just, I have reached out to the select board to follow up on our discussion. And I think it's okay to say now in an open meeting that the Conservation Commission voted to request that the select board allow us to obtain outside counsel. And the select board's going to review that request at the meeting at next Tuesday's meeting. And I'm asking when we made that vote, we only made the vote to request an attorney, not a specific attorney. Grace, I'm talking to the commission right now. Could you hold off, please? So I would like to make a request. I'd like to make the recommendation that we hire attorney Elizabeth Goodman, who is an attorney in Western Mass that Donna McNichol works with and thinks highly of and felt would be a good fit for our needs. Her information is on the web. I spoke with her today and felt she was very knowledgeable, understood the DEP regulations very well, is a town council for some small towns in Western Mass, so very familiar with municipal law. And I think she would be a good fit for us.
I'll
But
second that recommendation.
so let me finish saying that, you know, in order to make things move in an expedited way or in a timely way, once the select board approves this, assuming they will, and I hope they will, then I would need to execute an agreement with her. She charges on an hourly rate, and she thought that about 8 hours would be sufficient to meet the needs of reviewing kind of the current projects involving Lotto 32. So we're only asking for an attorney to support us around Lotto 32, not around any other issues. And she would be available to come to the public hearings and advise us on environmental law, and to also come to a meeting jointly with the select board so that we could have the advice of counsel and discussing with the select board the best process to move forward with. So that's what I'm asking the commission to consider. I see Grace, you have your hand raised. Do you want to make a comment?
I do. I would like to say that staff members bring immense expertise and are more reliable on average than unpaid volunteer positions, not because volunteers are not dedicated, but because staff members are paid and provided training more than unpaid volunteers. And I am disappointed in this committee for not valuing that expertise. Very few committees in our town have the benefit of having an on-call paid staff member who will give up their time and their personal life during the evening. To not take advantage of that, to not appreciate that, I think is a mistake on behalf of the entire committee. And that's what I wanted to say. As one of the very few people who is actually paid for the work in this town and who gives up not just the 25 hours a week I am paid for, but also 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, up to 80 hours a week of my life for this town.
Please mute
Liz,
yourself.
you're laughing, but it's absolutely
Please.
100% true.
We need to have an orderly
It
meeting.
is important to me that the volunteers who I spend that extra unpaid time serving appreciate and respect the paid staff members. That is especially important when it comes to the Conservation Commission and the land use clerk.
Grace, I'm a little confused. Are you suggesting that perhaps we should have you making these determinations? Was that what you were
I
asking?
don't know how you arrived at that conclusion, Miriam. What I'm saying is that the Conservation Commission should have more respect for the land use clerk, whoever is in that position, and also that you guys should be taking advantage of the privilege you are afforded as one of the few committees that has a paid staff person. And you guys should appreciate how much people who are actually paid to do this work know about it and the expertise that is created by being on call in the office to answer any question, anyone who walks in with a problem. Like, I'm sorry, but the land use clerk is the best person to respond to Conservation Commission questions that come in, because that person is there in the office and responding to those messages on a daily basis. And while Miriam, you do like 90% more than any other chair. Like, I want to recognize that. You're not going to be in this position forever. And in the future, there are going to be other chairs of the Conservation Commission who are not prepared to dedicate as much as their personal life as you do. And I really think it's important, as someone who spends most of my time getting committees and boards through these structural administrative challenges, I think it's really important that you guys design your policies so that you're taking into consideration how is this going to work someday when we don't have people who are prepared to dedicate as much volunteer labor. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for my time.
Can I just quickly respond to that? I was the paid staff to the Amherst Conservation Commission for 8 years. And just in terms of the snow decisions, that was the kind of thing that I would always check in with the chair on. You know, I would check in on, we've gotten this application in, there's 6 inches of snow, or if we got these many applications in, there's this much snow out there, I'm planning on telling them this. I would always check in with the chair on that. So there's no disrespect in my mind for anybody who's a municipal employee, because I'm a municipal employee. But the chair really has the authority is the answer there. So
Yeah,
that's all I want to say.
maybe just a question for Grace. Were you commenting on behalf of your position with the town or as a private citizen?
As a private citizen.
Okay,
I want
was
to be clear.
what you were
I
saying.
mean, I'm informed by my work for the town. I am absolutely informed. My position is informed, but I am commenting right now absolutely as a private citizen. This is not the tone I would use as a town clerk.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Can we move on?
Yes.
Okay. So, what I was saying, was that I had, whoops, got something. that I was recommending that we consider Elizabeth Goodman, or it goes by Beth Goodman as the attorney. I think given that Donna McNichol has advised us that she cannot give us legal advice because she is advising the town. And she does support our getting an outside counsel, and she approved of Elizabeth Goodman as a choice. I think those all argue for that choice.
So I'll second that recommendation.
Okay, I see a hand raised, and we're in the middle of a discussion. But I'll take a second, and then if there's, do you still have a comment, Mike?
Yes, I do. Sorry for the interruption, but I just am wondering whether it's, if it makes sense to have your attorney be a same attorney that works in the same office as the town's attorney.
I don't believe that's possible. I think that would be considered a conflict.
I'm sorry, I thought you said that the attorney you were suggesting works with Donna McNichol.
Oh, I'm sorry. They are both town councils for different towns. And when each of them have encountered situations like this, where they were, had to recuse themselves for some reason, they have used each other to be appointed for this purpose. I discovered her through a recommendation, an outside recommendation, and she wasn't initially, Donna McNichol didn't tell me about her. But when I asked Donna if she knew her, she spoke highly of her and said that she did feel like she would be a good choice. And I met with her and felt very confident in her skills and knowledge, and feel like she could help us. So make sure that we understand all the ins and outs of all this permitting that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
So we're just doing our due diligence to make sure that we're doing things properly. That's kind of what our goal here is. So so the motion would be to allow me to do whatever, I'm not really sure how to word this, but to allow me to take what steps are necessary to obtain an agreement to hire Elizabeth Goodman.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? No. Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont abstain, Khan,
Aye.
Harrington. I don't hear you. Robin?
Sorry, I was muted, so you didn't have to hear the accordion. Aye.
And Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, hopefully, if this all works out with the select board approving this effort, then would seek to have her come to our hearing on the 8th, and to also come to whatever meeting we set up with the select board. She did have a recommendation that when we set up this joint meeting with the select board, to consider getting a representative from the DEP, Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup, to also be present in order to answer any questions that might come up around permitting. And certainly can ask and see if it's possible to get someone. I can't guarantee that they would come. She also advised me and said that once, she's on board, she could write a legal opinion about this for us to share with the select board. But her strongest recommendation was that the commission not agree to segmenting the two NOIs, the library project and the BVW cleanup. She, in her opinion, believed that those were best addressed under one permit application. And I don't know if I could do justice to her reasoning around it. She said that DEP has a general policy of wanting to avoid multiple NOIs for a single parcel. And again, I'm not doing justice to her I may be misspeaking, but it seemed like she was sort of saying, because they're connected, and if you're doing a waste site cleanup of a BVW and a restoration project, there's going to be heavy equipment involved and possibly dredging contaminated material. And you kind of don't want that to be happening and crossing over a already developed library site. You'd want to kind of have that happen during construction or before the library construction phase, so that, you know, there would be some containment, and it wouldn't have an impact on the work that would be permitted for the library development, which kind of, I guess, makes sense. But anyway, she said that she would provide some written guidance about that.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on, we had 3 site visits. I thought we should just have follow-up. 2 of them were just post-construction reviews of erosion controls. I looked at 58 Lake Drive. There were no problem with their erosion controls for their NOI. And Mary David looked at 56 North Laurel Drive. Mary?
Yes. And there, I sent some pictures into their erosion controls looked acceptable.
So Beth and Mary and I met with Tim Hunting, Kat Hilton, a representative from the Wendell Conservation Commission, Howard Kinder, and also the landowner, the director of the Pine Brook Camp down by the Lakeview Road culvert for Fisk Brook, because Tim Hunting had noticed that, did I say Tim Hunting was there too? Okay, Tim Hunting. Tim had emailed us saying that the beavers had begun building a dam again at that culvert. And sure enough, when we went and looked yesterday, there was a significant amount of dam material inside the culvert that wasn't there 2 weeks ago. It's pretty impressive. Tim did not feel, and Mary and Beth, please jump in. He did not feel that the culvert was in imminent danger, and he wasn't recommending any immediate action. And we left it that we were asking him to reach out and try to obtain a consultation from Mike Callahan of Beaver Solutions to see what might be options for a flow protection device. Apparently, one of the observations is that the beaver activity at this particular culvert seems to only occur after the lake lowering happens. And that there's a lodge upstream, and people were hypothesizing that perhaps the beavers are impounding and damming there in order to protect their lodge. Because when the lake starts being lowered in late October, it's exposing the lodge. And by damming that culvert, they're kind of bringing up that impoundment around the lodge. So, you know, we were talking about perhaps there might be an option of like a seasonal flow protection device. Maybe it wouldn't be needed during the summer months when campers from the Pine Brook camp need access to go under the culvert to get to the lake. You know, maybe there'd be some workaround like that, like something that could be seasonally removed. I don't know. Do you guys have any comments?
Yeah, I look forward to being able to meet with somebody that can actually look at the area and make some suggestions.
Yeah.
No. So we're trying to find some other alternatives and try to be a little bit proactive, given you know, the interest that everybody, members of the public, have shown in having some alternative besides trapping. Though I imagine, you know, clearly, even with the trapping that happened within 2 weeks, within a month after that trapping, beavers had just moved right back in. So it's hard to control that. Okay, any other comments about trapping or beavers before we move on? Katie, Egan? Katie? Egan?
Yeah, so sorry, I was trying to get myself off mute. I was just gonna say that as an abutter to there, I would love to see a seasonal some kind of solution, like you just said, a beaver deceiver or whatever. You cannot get rid of all of the beaver, and I do not want to see a constant death stream of them just being killed one after another there. As living right there, I've had the benefit of watching the different family groups of beavers and kind of even getting to know them a little bit. I know that might sound funny to some people, but they're really amazing. And I do think that that anything that we could do to help support the wildlife to continue to thrive in our area, we should be trying to do. I am a pragmatic person. I know we need to protect the roads and the other structures around here as well. So I know that the camp, there's reason for them to want access under that bridge. So I absolutely love the idea of the seasonal use to allow them to go back and forth in their kayaks and canoes, or anybody else for that matter, during the peak use season, and then put the deceivers up to try to protect the wildlife here. Because that's why a lot of us live here. It's for the wildlife. And other reasons, but that's a primary reason. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I would just say is, the final decisions aren't really our authority. It's really up to the select board. And I would say, communicate with the select board, because they're the ones who would oversee the highway department decision-making. And, there's a lot of things that would need to get ironed out about all of this. So, but at least getting a consultation to see what is options seems like a good idea if it can happen. So we'll see what happens. Certainly we'll put it on the agenda if we have an update from anybody. So thank you. You want to lower your hand? Okay. I don't have anything else on my agenda for tonight. Does anybody else have anything we need to cover for tonight?
No.
Okay, so we're meeting on the 8th. We have an RDA on the 8th for a garage at 375 Locks Pond Road, but we've already done the site visit for that, so we don't need to schedule that. And we're having the request to amend the order of conditions for Ames Pond also on the 8th. So we'll have those 3 topics on our agenda. Okay. All right. Somebody want to make, it's 8:35. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn at
Second.
8:35.
Second.
I second.
Okay. David.
Aye.
Sant, aye. Harrington.
Aye.
On.
Aye.
And Wilson.
Hi.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Hey, to you. Thank you.